We now recognize Mr. Guest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Secretary, the discretionary budget this year is $62.2 billion, is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
And the request last year was $60.4 billion as it relates to discretionary spending, is that correct?
I believe so, Congressman.
You stated in your opening statement that there was an insufficient budget, that we were not giving you the funds necessary for you to be able to carry out your job and the men and women who serve under you. Last year, you requested $60.4 billion, and Congress appropriated $61.8 billion. So we actually appropriated more money than you asked for. When you look at what you're asking for this year versus what we appropriated last year, those numbers are very similar. There is not a huge discrepancy between $62.2 and $61.8 billion. And as I look through the individual items that you requested, one of the things that Ms. Henson brought up were detention beds. Congress this year funded 41,500 detention beds, but yet you're only requesting 34,000 detention beds. And you also referenced the Senate bill. In the Senate bill, you said the Senate bill, which never passed out of the Senate, but was a bill in which they were debating as part of the overall funding package, you said would have funded 50,000 detention beds. And I'm assuming you supported the Senate bill, did you not?
Oh, I hope you would have as well, Congressman.
Well, if it would have come over here, I would have been happy to have looked at it, but unfortunately, it never made it out of the Senate, so the House did not have a chance to review the legislation. So do you support then the 50,000 detention beds that would have been in the Senate bill?
In the context of the bipartisan Senate bill, yes.
All right, but yet you're asking for some 16,000 less detention beds and actually 7,500 less detention beds than we currently fund. And you talk about expedited removal, and you say that people who are in detention often have expedited removal. And so if the intent is to those individuals who don't need to be here, to remove them from the country sooner rather than later, and we know about the immigration courts and the backlog and all the problems that we face, putting people in detention expedites their removal from the country generally, does it not?
Congressman, a few things. Number one, remember that when we fund detention beds, we also have to fund personnel. It is part of a...
Do you need more money for personnel? I want to know what you need to fund more detention beds, because to me, it seems asinine, Mr. Secretary, that we're going to ask for less detention beds when we see a record surge in immigration, when we see a record number of orders of removal that have been issued by the court, but yet we're saying that we don't need detention beds if we're going to, one, prevent people from coming into the country, or if we're not going to prevent them once they're here and once there is a final disposition of their case, if we're going to seek to remove them. Okay. And I'm very concerned about that fact. I'm very concerned that you're asking not only for less than we funded this year, but you're asking for substantially less than the Senate bill, which you said that you agreed with.
Congressman, a few points. Number one, as I articulated earlier, our fiscal year 25 budget request was submitted before Congress passed the fiscal year 2024 budget.
What number do you need? Is 34,000, is that the number that you need right now?
We are committed to working with Congress to sustain the 41,500 beds that Congress funded.
If that's the number, why didn't you put that in your budget? Why are you substantially underselling the number of detention beds and then making Congress come in and bump those numbers up? If those are the numbers you need, if those are the appropriate numbers, Mr. Secretary, I would ask that you put those numbers actually in your budget and that you ask Congress to fund that. And that you don't expect us that we're just going to plus up those numbers, and so you leave those numbers artificially low. Now, one last thing, and I know my time is running short, so in an effort to make sure that I save time for other members, Fox News is reporting that there is going to be a possible executive order issued by the president. This says to shut down the border by the end of the month. Are you aware, are you in any discussions with the president about executive orders that would relate to border security and or immigration?
Congressman, we are consistently evaluating what options are available to us. We do that on a regular basis. I will share with you that executive action, which is inevitably challenged in the courts, is no substitute for enduring
do you-
solution, if I may, the enduring solution of legislation that will fix what everyone agrees is a broken immigration system.
And as a secretary, do you believe that the president has the power to issue executive orders that would deal with border security and/or immigration?
We have actually implemented executive orders by way of very critical and effective regulations, and I would be pleased to speak with you about those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.